What is the most disturbing fact about the human body? Story 1. Vitamin C deficiency, aka scurvy, will eventually cause your collagen levels to deplete so that all of your old scar tissue will start to break down and old wounds will start to reopen. That includes collagen patches inside of your organs. Little known fact is that the sickness and trauma cause small rips and tears in our organs that also get patched up with collagen. This is why it's a good idea to just avoid getting sick if you can. That being said, it's very hard to not eat vitamin C unless you do it on purpose. It's more likely that you eat too much of it and pee it out than being very deficient in it. This post right off the bat is living up to the disturbing part of the title. I do not like this image. Someone does mention there are numerous signs of illness before this particularly gross symptom, including feeling of general malaise, tiredness, bruising, bleeding gums, severe leg and or joint pain. Story 2. Your brain blocks out the feeling of your organs moving around in your body. What's more, while operating on the bowels, if doctors have to take your intestines outside your body to reach other stuff, they have to fixate them since the peristaltic movement pulls them back into the body. Unless you just gave birth. Then you can feel organs shifting around in that dead space where the baby used to be. For me, it was about a week, as everything settles back into place or sloshes around until your uterus shrinks back down and your tummy tightens back up. Very weird feeling. I'm starting to be grateful for my brain doing things automatically because that's just unimaginable. Story 3. Aneurysms. Highly unpredictable and seemingly random insta-death. My mom passed away at 55, 10 days shy of her 56th birthday in 2006. Brain aneurysm. I was living in Florida, but it happened September 13th, 2006. My dad described it as her stumbling out of the bedroom saying something was wrong, and on the way to the ER, her last words were complaining about his driving. He was being erratic and trying to get her to the hospital ASAP. The doctors that tried to save her told my dad the aneurysm was so deep and bad that even if she was on the operating table when it happened, she'd have been dead no matter what. Yeah, aneurysms really suck. Thank you everyone for your support and to everyone that has shared an experience like mine. My heart is with you. I've had a long time to grieve and come to terms, and some years are better than others, but I take solace in that her energy is still with me. Reminders of her are everywhere. Her love, compassion, patience, humor, and most of all, attitude. Our past loved ones live on through us, and I do my best to honor her memory every day. Remember to hug your loved ones and remind them that you care, even if it's just checking in on them with a text. Thanks again, everyone. Not quite instant death, though. There are about 1 in 50, but are almost always benign and only get noticed during a check or something else. They are only actually bad if they rupture, which is somewhere between 1 in 300K and 1 in 3 million. On another note, most ruptures come from some kind of trauma to the head. I'm talking like a glass bottle thrown at your face, but people ignore more than you would think, leading to unexpected medical events. It is also not a specific thing. An aneurysm is just a blood vessel blowing up in your head, and you have a lot of them in your head, meaning severity and location can range from full recovery to instant potato sack drop dead. Along with this, they are not limited to your head as you have arteries all over your body. Albert Einstein had one in his abdomen. You can get them in your thigh, probably your arm, etc. A lady I knew from high school died of a sudden ruptured brain aneurysm. She had an awful headache and was gone shortly after. This was the first I'd ever heard of brain aneurysms. Story 4. If your bowel is obstructed severely and for long enough, you will vomit crap out of your mouth. This happened to a girl I went to basic training with. I was in the med-hold facility due to an ankle injury, and she was assigned to our unit. She was on bed rest because she hadn't been able to poop for 3 whole weeks, and it was causing debilitating abdominal pain for her. They gave her laxatives, x-rayed her stomach, and couldn't figure out why nothing was working until the crap hit the metaphorical fan. After about 3 days of no progress, she started vomiting crap and was rushed to the ER. Turned out she had a bowel obstruction made of her own hair. She chewed the end of her braid compulsively. My old mechanic used to be a heavy opiate, meth, and cocaine user. He told me that at one point he was so backed up he got fecal vomiting. The only reason we got close enough to tell stories like that is that we used to ride to the methadone clinic together. 2 hours in a vehicle together every morning will have you running out of stories to tell. He also said that he went on a meth bender once and all of the capillaries in his feet burst. He was was extremely lucky he didn't need to get them amputated. The guy was married with 3 children. His wife was completely sober and a saint for putting up with him. It's crazy to me that he was able to own his own garage and keep working throughout all of that insanity. He was a functioning addict. Thank God I'm not eating right now. There was a House episode that included this symptom. I don't remember all of the show. I probably blocked it out. Story 5. No matter how hard you strain, it's estimated you only use about 60% of your full strength. This is not due to weakness of muscle, but your brain. The disturbing part, if your brain didn't stop you, you could tear your own ligaments, muscles, and tendons and break your own bones trying to throw a ball as hard as you can. Anecdotal urban legends of mothers lifting cars off babies are thought to have been the fight or flight of adrenaline temporarily overriding this limit. I think that's more or less why pain is a thing, to let us know we are at our limit. Also why people with very high pain tolerance can be a danger to themselves. Congenital insensitivity to pain is one of the easiest ways folks can turn into a past tense just by going about their lives. Without the ability to feel pain, for instance, you can put your hands on a hot stove and not realize it until you smell it. On a related note, CIPA folks have a hard time sweating and often die from hypothermia as a result. When I first read about people who are completely insensitive to pain, I thought it would be kind of cool. Then I realized what would happen if you accidentally leaned against a stove while it was on. Story 6. That's the thing. Some epileptic people tear their muscles or even break bones just while seizing. Yep, and it's also why you should never put something in the mouth of someone to stop them swallowing their tongue during a seizure, especially not fingers. Tooth enamel is the hardest part of the body and jaw muscles are surprisingly strong. I had grand mal seizures for years, and yeah, a seizure feels like a Charlie horse in your calf all over your body. You continue to do the activity that caused a cramp while cramping. Most of the time, I couldn't move for about 2 days afterwards. 2 minutes feels like 15 during a seizure. I know a guy who was epileptic and used to have grand mal seizures. He was unconscious during them. He twice dislocated his shoulder, one time chipping the top of his humerus bone, requiring surgery with pins. He has no recollection of how it happened. Not sure if he fell on something or the seizure itself caused it. I also learned through him that there is a seizure called an aura, also called a focal aware seizure. Sufferers describe music, swirling colors, nausea, sense of impending doom, and confusion. Auras can precede another type of seizure like grand mal or exist on their own. Apologies to those who have them, but I find that fascinating. The brain is interpreting the random firing of neurons as sensations. Story 7. Most disturbing fact for me is hormones in your brain drastically affect who you are as a person. Nothing you can do about, not your mind, intelligence, or willpower. You are a slave to your brain chemistry. This was made incredibly clear to me after I went into full menopause after my hysterectomy. Before that, I was highly estrogen dominant with PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, and every lady calamity imaginable. Estrogen is a necessary hormone, helps preserve bone density, retain muscle mass, etc. But I was an estrogen factory stuck in relentless oversupply, like that auntie that puts food on your plate even after the 5th helping. So after uterus yeetage, I went on HRT, which means a specific controlled dosage of body-identical estrogen. Well, damn. Executive function and investigative reasoning became possible. Even daft things like knowing to measure a space before buying furniture for it, or moving my plants seasonally so they get more sunlight. I changed the light bulbs in my headlights yesterday by feeling around the house and deducing out what needed to be removed. In order, I could not do any of that before. So yeah, menopause was the best thing that has ever happened to my brain because now I can control a hormone. A college classmate of mine was a trans woman who started transitioning in her 40s or so. I'm bad with ages. She carried a folding fan with her and would whip it out as needed, and there was one day she needed it despite it being pretty chilly. Someone asked her if she was alright and she explained she felt hot because of her HRT. She then cracked a joke that it was like going through puberty and menopause all at the same time, and we all just died laughing. It was nice seeing her be so at ease with the process that she could make jokes about it like that. I can only guess at her true inner thoughts or feelings about it, but I really got the feeling that whatever awkwardness or weirdness of this second puberty experience for her was, well overshadowed by knowing it was all a part of her becoming herself. I wouldn't say there's nothing we can do. There's always hormone replacement therapy. The trick could be getting the diagnosis and prescription for it. Story 8. You can be reset by even minor brain trauma, personality, attractions, dislikes, just because a lump of fat jiggled wrong, or more probably was denied a bit of oxygen. Now you exist as memories of this person everyone knew, and you're too tired to keep explaining that you aren't him, so you just do the crap he did while everyone is watching you. Thanks to anyone who reached out with support, resources, anecdotes, and just questions. I'm okay, and I'm touched that people do care. I'm trying to learn to trust actual support. One guy hit his head while he dove into a pool but became really good with numbers. He could tell the day of the week for some faraway date in the future or multiply large numbers, etc. My twin has a rare form of epilepsy and it was caused by a scar on her brain, except they believe the scar was started by a TBI she got as a 6-year-old, except the scar is on the wrong side of where she fractured her skull. She asked her neurosurgeon why that is. He's one of the top in the USA, and he literally just said, "I don't know, brains are weird. We literally only learn what brains allow us to learn about them, and even then, we could be wrong and have it be a trick." There was also that documented case of a woman from the 1920s who was knocked out, and when she woke up, she firmly believed she was an Egyptian princess who spoke with a perfect accent and could speak the language. She apparently also helped find artifacts from that time period as well. I'm not sure about the artifact part, but the rest of it is very interesting. The doctor's quote is unusually candid. Story 9. Once your immune system finds out you have eyes, you're blind. Your eyes are more brain than body, in that your meninges, which is a layer that encases your brain and central nervous system, follows the optic nerve and becomes the sclera, the layer that encases your eyes. Can confirm, I have ankylosing spondylitis. One of the symptoms is inflammation of the iris. I have had the flare-up twice. Both times the white blood cells cover my eyes, and I go blind until I get anti-inflammatory eye drops. I'm sorry to hear so many others have AS. I had to see a specialist really far away from where I live because local doctors didn't know what was happening, so I am surprised to see so many others that have it too. For what it's worth, I have found 2 things help reduce the pain. No sugar diet. The more sugar I eat, the worse the pain, and exercising reduces the pain, especially long-term consistent exercise. Extends to other things too. Most of the organs that are way more painful to hurt than others are like that because the immune system doesn't go there, lest it attack your own body. Another great example, no cell in your body has a flagellum except sperm. Basically all harmful bacteria have that same tail though, so the immune system recognizes cells with it as dangerous. On one hand, this is sort of beneficial because it encourages survival of the fittest once the sperm are in a woman. But if your immune system finds your balls, whoops, you're infertile now. Hence, testicles have a lot more intense pain receptors, just like eyes. You can't afford an infected cut in either spot. I know eyes are complicated, but I didn't know this bit. Story 10. Not so much disturbing, but the fact that your nose is always in your line of sight and your brain just pretty much ignores it. Nope, my nose is large enough and my vision bad enough that I have been consciously aware of the presence of my nose in my line of sight my entire life. My eye professionals have said that if either one of those 2 things weren't true, I'd be just like everybody else and be able to ignore my nose. It does the same thing if you have to use glasses. I have some glasses that have some pretty thick frames on them, and I don't see or notice them until I actively try to look for them. It's one of the things that causes me to often forget that I actually have my glasses on, as my pea brain thinks I don't for whatever reason. I had a retina surgery where they put an air bubble in my eye to make sure the retina was going to stay. I saw a ring in that eye for a couple of days and kept thinking I had my glasses on when I didn't. It was a weird experience. Story 11. Human babies are helpless at birth compared to other animals because our brains grow so big we evolved to give birth early in our development, or else we'd kill the mother coming out of the birth canal. We could have developed a wider pelvis, but I'd wager this is only one of the factors in when we are born. There is a balance between how developed we can get and how much burden there is to the mother. Blood supply, bleeding control, nutrition, locomotion, and speed of the next reproductive cycle are just a few additional factors I think would also matter just as much as the size of the baby. Also, we are bipedal and carry our young, which not many species do. A quadruped can't support its young like bipeds can. Kangaroos, for example, have comparatively underdeveloped young, but they shelter in a pouch. If we could have developed a wider pelvis, then we'd also need bigger and wider legs, and walking and running would be more awkward. We used to be endurance hunters. You'd chase after an animal for miles until it fell down from exhaustion. It was probably easier evolutionary to give birth earlier than redesign the entire bottom half of our bodies. It's kind of fun to imagine redesigning the human body's shape. Story 12. When you die, your blood settles at the lowest elevation in your body, meaning if you die upside down, you could be found hours later with sludgy blood leaking from your eyes, nose, ears, and mouth from the pressure buildup. The rest of your body will be ghostly white. This just reminds me of any and every CSI episode where they said without fail, lividity is fixed, referencing the blood settling to the lowest position. Fun fact, if someone is in a motorcycle crash and they have an erection, you shouldn't take their helmet off because it's a sign of a neck injury. That is an odd conglomeration of information right there. Also, in every show I've watched about true crime where they mention lividity, they never say the person is leaking blood from anywhere. I feel tricked. Story 13. We rely on millions of friendly symbiotic bacteria and microorganisms to help us digest food. Essentially, there is a whole community in our intestines. That sounds like a wicked cool job. What's your favorite part of being a microbiome scientist? Are you extra freaked out knowing about things like bacteria? Is there anything to know about best practices to keep a healthy gut biome? Sorry for all the questions. I love when I hear about different and interesting sounding professions on Reddit. It's kind of lost its sparkle for me recently, mainly due to workplace politics. It's really cool seeing what is in different individuals' microbiomes and what their diet is. Not extra freaked out, just more cautious of food poisoning sources and what antibiotics are doing to us, / how screwed we'd be without antibiotics. There isn't a hard and fast rule for getting a healthy gut biome, mainly because everyone's is different. Just eat good food. Avoid fatty / greasy / overly processed food. Take probiotics and prebiotics. Just taking probiotics is like trying to grow palm trees in the Arctic. Prebiotics lay the healthy soil for things to grow, colonize, especially important during / after antibiotic treatment. Keep up with the fiber intake. Healthy bowel equals healthy microbiome, and a healthy microbiome equals healthy bowel. Don't be sucked in to try those gut biome analysis businesses like Ancestry, but for your gut. They claim to be able to tell you what your microbiome is lacking and what it keeps to be healthier, normally vitamins / supplements plugged by them. The research isn't there yet to be able to say you suffer from fatigue and brittle nails. You need to eat more of X to increase the population of X in your stomach. I know there are bacteria and microorganisms in all of our digestive systems, but having them described as a colony makes me squirm. Story 14. Your body functions due to thousands of different chemical reactions, and if any one of them stops functioning normally, you will die or become really ill. This is why I ended up studying biochemistry and molecular biology. Truly believe these disciplines will eventually provide the clues to prevent random diseases such as cancer from taking us to the grave. I am in constant awe that my body has taken me to the age of 64 without major mishaps so far, although many of my near and dear ones have not been so lucky. I'm 42 with stage 3 colorectal cancer, probably Lynch syndrome. I have some weird genetic thing that allows immunotherapy as opposed to radiation / chemo. This is a very new treatment and would not have been available even 18 months ago. My genetics are trying to kill me, but also making it easier on me not to die. I think about this often. Having lost a lot of family members to cancer, this knowledge kind of haunts me. Story 15. By the time you feel sick from certain ailments, you're already past the point of full recovery. Same thing with rabies. You can have it up to 4 years with no symptoms, and as soon as you start showing symptoms, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. If only people would understand this. People see people who get a vaccine get that illness, and they assume that there's some sort of conspiracy where the vaccine makes you sick, or that it doesn't work because vaccines are supposed to make it impossible to get it. The existence of those symptoms is your immune system fighting back, not the disease itself. That's why the death of unvaccinated people can seem so sudden. Since the immune system can't fight back, they remain asymptomatic while they're ravaged by disease. Part of the pushback against the COVID vaccine was people saying it doesn't keep you from getting COVID, but that wasn't what it was able to do. It was supposed to keep the disease from getting so bad that you would have to go to the hospital or worse, die. Story 16. Your body actually creates / accidentally forms cancer cells every day. The body is just really good about destroying the individual cells. Even sunburn, where your skin peels, is a trait to remove diseased skin prone to developing cancer. However, every so often it misses a cancer cell and it grows uncontrollably. About half of all people will get cancer in their lifetime. Correction, half of all people will develop sustained cancer in their lifetime. 100% of people will get cancer in their lifetime. It's just a matter of whether or not that's what kills them. If you live long enough to avoid dying from other things, there is a 100% certainty that cancer/complications from cancer will be what kills you. So what I'm trying to say is drink coffee, snort aspartame, put red dye number 40 in everything you eat because screw it. Avoiding carcinogens is impossible and pointless. Live your life. I read a study that detailed the autopsy results of breast cancer, which said the occurrence was high. It showed that many women had breast cancer, but it was not their cause of death, and in many cases, they had not been diagnosed with it. Story 17. I coded in the ER and didn't see my life flash before my eyes, but I saw this flash of my boyfriend about 20 years in the future living his life without me. He looked so sad and exhausted. Then I had a flash of us together about 20 years older and we were laughing. At the time, we'd been dating for about 7 months. We will be celebrating our 22nd wedding anniversary in July. To this day, I don't know what this man sees in me. He's way out of my league. But I knew then that if I potentially had the ability to make his life happy, I had to hold on and try. My brain pulled me back from the brink of death to share this love. Not sure if it's related, but I just learned about what's called terminal lucidity. It's where people usually affected by Alzheimer's or dementia can seem like they are briefly their old selves again, but at that stage, it's just a shadow of who they used to be. It is a last effort of the brain to stay alive. This can last from hours to a few days and can, for those that understand it, prepare that the end of the patient's life is near. For those that do not understand it, it can be a traumatic experience as it can feel like losing the person all over again. My theory when people remember traumatic events and say it was like slow motion is because your brain is overclocked, trying to keep you alive and observing/remembering details at double normal speed for a burst of time. I have heard some cases of people waking up from long-term comas for a couple of days, just like their old selves, and then in a short time they passed away. I've always wondered what was going on. Story 18. With the progress of medicine, we managed to make infertility partly hereditary. A lot of fertility issues are genetic, well before fertility treatments. If it was serious enough that they couldn't have a bio-child, no fertility issues would be passed on to the child. Well, now there have been cases of kids being conceived with IVF and IUI are now also using those methods because they struggle to have kids as well. There is genetic testing, but the general ones don't cover anything more than a few of the most common ones, so there are still parents who test their kids and still end up with genetic issues. Sanfilippo syndrome is one that I follow. It is basically childhood dementia. Life expectations between 10 and 20. They lose any skills they learned as a toddler. I wish I didn't know about this syndrome now. The other part is logical, but I'd never thought of the implications. Story 19. We're simultaneously both very strong and very fragile. There's people who have fallen from huge buildings with barely any damage at all, or survived getting struck by lightning with nothing but a cool scar. And at the same time, if a blood vessel gets clogged by a tiny clot or bursts anywhere in our brain, it can just kill you right then and there. Watch Jeremy Renner's interview about his accident on Disney+. The man survived being run over by a snowplow, and yet someone can die from a paper cut. I have so many questions. I fishtailed under a semi on about a 70-mile-per-hour highway and walked away with a scratch and a bruise. Saw an accident a month or so later where 3 out of 4 people were killed in a similar accident at the same place I did. The one who lived was a child who was in critical condition. Looking back, the only part of the cabin that wasn't smashed was the driver's side. Our bodies are so fickle, it's too much to contemplate all the difficulties and contradictions, so my brain refuses to compute that. Yikes. Story 20. As someone who has had the privilege to work with cadavers, I will say that your sciatic nerve is about the diameter of a horse in some individuals. The brain is a lot smaller than you would think. The spinal cord is about as thick as a pencil. If there is an ischemic stroke going on in certain areas of the brain, it has backflow arteries to connect and bypass the clogged artery. If you suffer brain death, the reason your heart is still beating is because the function is coming from the brain stem. If you lose partial vision due to a lesion along the optic pathway, the brain will compensate and try and trick you into thinking you don't have partial vision loss. Medical brain death means the brainstem has ceased function as well. The heart is capable of functioning irrespective of the brainstem, it just won't be able to manage the rate the heart pumps at. We check brainstem reflexes to confirm brain death, and if they are all absent, we call it brain death. Inferior cranial anastomosis was one of my favorite terms in school. My favorite medical term is pseudoxanthoma elasticum, or PXE. CXC. It's a horrible disease of the elastic fibers of the body where calcium deposits accumulate on those fibers, making them no longer stretchy, like they're supposed to be. Basically, your body hardens up. It's awful, but the words sound cool. Sorry to anyone who has it. Story 21. Your heart pumps approximately 5 liters of blood every minute while you're resting. That's your body's whole blood content going through your heart in a minute. When your BPM is higher, like when you're working out, your heart can pump 3 or 4 times more blood per minute. BPM means beats per minute here, aka heart rate. The normal heart rate is 60 to 100 BPM. This ICU nurse has seen heart rates of 20 to 180 though. As for the amount of blood in the body, the average adult has 1.2 to 1.5 gallons, depending on the size of the person. The blood is constantly circulating throughout the body every moment. Oxygenated blood gets pumped out to the body through arteries. Deoxygenated blood goes back to the heart via veins. It goes to the cells of the lungs, brains, heart, extremities, all organs. Blood cells, just like all cells, do die eventually and get replaced. Don't even get me started with blood cells. There are so many of each kind. White cells, red cells, platelets, and there are blood proteins that can get messed up. There are blood clotting disorders, leukemias, and lymphomas, so many kinds of those, anemia, sickle cell anemia, and more. I told a doctor once that blood is complicated. He said it is not complicated, it is complex. I still don't know the difference. Story 22. All its little glitches. Applying pressure to the carotid sinus by squeezing your neck in just the wrong way, it triggers a reflex in the vagus nerve, which can stop your heart. It's known as carotid sinus reflex death. Dahmer may have accidentally killed his first victim this way when he was surprised by his victim suddenly dying when he only began strangling him. There is a tiny fraction of a second in each heartbeat where the heart will also stop and kill you if you take a thump to the chest right in the bullseye of that window. It's called commotio cordis. Taking 2 hard hits to the head within a certain time frame will kill you by causing the brain to swell massively. This is why sucker punches are so lethal, because 1 hit quickly becomes 2 once your unconscious head hits the ground. It's known as second impact syndrome. Taking most drugs after having grapefruit for breakfast can kill you. The grapefruit inhibits the CYP450 enzyme, which controls drug potential in your system, effectively turning a therapeutic dose into a lethal one. The carotid nerve thing is both highly unlikely and would have to happen at a specific point in the heart cycle. A more disturbing fact is that the carotid nerve sits at a Y-shaped split in the artery where one part supplies the face and the other the brain. This spot is one of the most common places where you can have a buildup of arterial plaque. This means that a blow to the carotid sinus could dislodge a piece of plaque and cause a stroke. About grapefruit, that enzyme is involved in metabolizing a lot of medications, but it does so in different ways. Some medications are metabolized by it into other more effective substances, meaning that grapefruit will make the medication less potent. Others are removed from the bloodstream by that enzyme, meaning their effects will be stronger and last longer. There are actually a ton of different medications that interact with that enzyme and similar ones. Cimetidine is a little more potent than grapefruit juice as an inhibitor. The one being discussed a lot in the news, mifepristone, that is a very potent inhibitor, and mixing that with most opioids could indeed be dangerous because of this. Then drugs like modafinil or even the supplement St. John's wort will actually induce the enzyme, making your Xanax almost completely ineffective as it's cleared from the bloodstream by this enzyme. Then some people are naturally overproducers or underproducers, so they'll end up being much more sensitive or less sensitive to medications. There's a tiny fraction of a second in each heartbeat where the heart will also stop and kill you if you take a thump to the chest right in the bullseye of that window. It's called commotio cordis. This is what happened to NFL player Damar Hamlin. Had there not been people there when he collapsed on the field to give him CPR, he would have died right there on the field. Damar is the first person I thought of when I saw this list. I'm so glad the medical staff knew right away how serious his situation was. In addition to that, him being a top athlete could only help him attain full recovery. Story 23. You, as in your consciousness, personality, history, and existence, is just a brain floating in fluid, trusting electrical signals from your nervous system. For all you may actually know, you are just a brain in a jar that's fabricating your reality in order to cope with a lack of input from outside stimulus. That's all on the point of perspective, really. I mean, all this that's happened in your life, good or bad, could be considered amazing compared to an endless existence in a void. No sight, no sound, no sensation, only your thoughts. I guess if if reality is a construct created by a subconsciousness from a brain in a jar, could it be from a life lived, on repeat as a coping mechanism to avoid the reality of being a brain in a jar, like watching a familiar movie or a self-reflection of self-doubt and guilt? I've never taken a philosophy class. I guess that shows, but have had these thoughts in my head for a while. Some of the most interesting philosophical conversations I've had have been with people who've never taken a class. A lot of people that study philosophy get all caught up in the pretentious, "Oh, well, Plato's theory of forms would have us believe that what we term reality is simply a copy of a higher reality, but that clashes against Descartes' cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am." I much prefer to talk about and challenge ideas rather than prattle on about bull to sound smart. And yes, I am aware that I sound jaded. Back to the point though. You're right, compared to the complete lack of stimulation that a brain in a vat would have, this world is fantastic. And to be honest, I haven't really given any thought to whether my brain could be in a vat after previously living a real simulated life. I've always approached it as though the brain's always been in the vat, in which case I think our imagination's inability to come up with anything truly new, all fairy tale creatures are just a variety of animals and features we've already seen out together, rules out that being a possibility because it would need something to go off. But if you take a brain that previously experienced life, like if someone stole your brain whilst you were asleep one night and put it in a vat, then it's entirely possible that it could block that traumatic event out, which we know brains can do, and continue on as normal as a way to handle the utter lack of stimuli and as a coping mechanism to handle the emotional upheaval. Gonna have to sit on this one for a bit. So this seems to be evidence of brains thinking about brains being brains, or maybe not being brains. The brain floating in a jar image makes me think of the Matrix. Or does it? Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story that you would like to share, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.